welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the BFF show. I am Brendan.
I'm Franco.
And today, a little bit of a potpourri of topics, if you will. One of the things that we do get into occasionally on the show, we did this a lot on the radio show, is we do talk about sort of the intersection of race and sports, because it happens quite a bit. And I was talking to you prior to our recording that the Los Angeles Times right here did a very interesting article looking at the baseball operation executives that are associated with all the major league teams, and the fact that of those teams, there are only 2 African American men who are at the top, and that it's still, after decades of discussion and being called out in the media, being called out by players, GMs, about how we need to be more diverse, we haven't seen that at the top. And you've seen more and more white males be promoted to GM status at a very young age, which you could also look at based on the experience, probably shouldn't have, because that's my opinion. I'm looking at somebody like, despite being successful, Theo Epstein wasn't a known quantity, yet he was handed the reins of the Red Sox because of his advanced degrees, about his access in the world of sabermetrics and that world that was beginning. And then how that kind of became the trend. Look for the very, very smart, the well-curated, the well-groomed, if you will, where men that, particularly men of color that had decades of experience, were being offered an interview, but never hired. So I wanted to get your take on how you see Major League Baseball's approach to this, what they need to do differently, and why hasn't this changed? I know that's a very
loaded question. To start with, that picture is a bit disturbing, and it's reflected in football as well. If you look at the ownership of major NFL teams, predominantly white. Same thing in NBA basketball. It's kind of the slow movement of business culture. And while socially we can say we're turning the corner, we're more inclusive, everything else, the reality is that education opportunities are much more available to Caucasian males, even more so like women. Caucasian males have better opportunities for education, and that kind of translates into getting jobs like this. That makes a big difference. It is concerning with baseball because baseball has become a predominantly Latino sport. A lot of your stars come from Latin countries. A lot of them are kind of pulled from their families. It's almost fair to say that baseball exploits Latino players, and it's not even kind of. Just look at the Yasiel Puig situation and everything happened with that. That's a great example of an ownership not understanding culture, not understanding the process of coming to America, and really exploiting that situation to get a smaller contract and pay him less money. And it's concerning. And even if you look at beyond African American or black, if you look at Latino owners, there's only Artie Moreno of the Angels, who gets a lot of pushback all the time from other owners. You have Linda Alvarado with the Rockies, who's a co-owner. And that's really the limit of it. You do have Omar Minaya for a long time with the Padres, but he's not gotten another opportunity since then, which kind of speaks to what you're talking about before, the hiring process. Until we do a better job as a society, making sure educational opportunities are extended to everybody, and people can say affirmative action and everything like that, and that's all good and fine, that doesn't balance out the fact that minority students are going to schools that are less likely to progress them into college. And we're getting less of an education, and we're underserved, and all those other things that you can really point to before you raise as a Trump supporter would do, forgive me if you're listening, would say, well, affirmative action is supposed to balance that out. It's not. And until we make the education process more equal, we're going to keep seeing this. And the Rooney Rule is not going to fix anything because it's just lip service.
The article does go into the history that I'll share. We can comment a little bit on. The 1999 Bud Selig directed teams consider minorities when filling vacancies for manager, GM, assistant GM, scouting director, and minor league director. With more minorities in the candidate pool, the logic went surely more would get hired. This is coming right from the Times. Maybe not after a first interview, but after a second or third, they might not have gotten without the chance to make a strong impression the first time. MLB enacted what now came to be known as the Selig Rule. 3 teams were managed by minorities in 1999. That number rose to 5 in 2000, 7 in 2001, 10 in 2002, and a record tied again in 2009. That same year, a record 5 teams employed a minority general manager. Today, 18 years after the introduction of the C-League rule, the number of minority managers is the same as when C-League imposed the rule.
Yeah,
which is crazy. I mean, I from the perspective of, so 18 years ago, all this work was put in.
Yep.
And actually, that's giving a little bit too much credit. I don't know if there might not have been a lot of work done by Major League Baseball besides just lip service, but
if checks and balances were put in, we can say that. A system of checks and balances. Yeah.
And I guess, and from the article, the retort from Major League Baseball is that, well, we're going in the right direction. But I guess my question is, what direction do they think they're going in? Because shouldn't that direction mean that we have more diversity?
We should. I liken it to the Band-Aid idea. Like when you first have a cut, you put a Band-Aid on there, you remember it's there. And then when it starts to heal, take the Band-Aid off, you kind of forget the cut's there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how we do everything. We're very reactionary. When Haiti had an earthquake for 2 weeks, everybody was sending money to Haiti. Let's help Haiti. And then even though the stripe is still happening there 2 years later, do you see any more help Haiti things going on? We react to situations as they come up, and then we feel good about ourselves because we put a little bit of effort into fixing something, and then we forget about it. And that's what you're seeing with baseball. That's what you're seeing with football. I mean, the Times article will certainly have that effect, right? So now we'll see a bump for a few more years. Then I'll go back down. It's very cyclic. I think the more you bring attention to it, the better it'll be. And hopefully, now that C-League's gone, things will change. But I'm not sure.
I think ultimately, I mean, this to me goes hand in hand with, the ongoing discussions that you've heard in sports regarding Major League Baseball is boring. No one knows how to fix it. I think the answer to fixing some of it lies in, why don't you start putting out general managers that look like the people that you're trying to get on the field, or that look like the people that you're trying to get actually engaged in the sport. I think that could be helpful. That's just me talking, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't...
Yeah, it's a dangerous statement in some ways. But in some ways, you're right. It'd be easier for a community to buy into a sport if they felt represented in some ways. And it does help that, I mean, players are Latino and everything else, but you're not exactly earning goodwill or earning attention by keeping things the same old, same old. And hopefully the idea is with more diversity and more different, a more unique executive base, you'd have ideas that fix the sport and get it more watchable. I mean, beyond just who looks like who, you're basically excluding an entire base of ideas that could really improve the game. And the sooner they figure that out, and the sooner they kind of make an effort to make sure that they're representing everybody equally, especially their players, which are the ones who are really suffering right now, the better they'll be off.
And you mentioned briefly the NFL. I mean, that's another area that needs a lot of work. I feel like a lot of sports in general in America need a lot of work with their diversity outreach. Where do you think you go, speaking to the NFL, is it the same kind of concept with the MLB? The same points could be made for both?
I think it's a universal statement because, again, we talked about this last episode, but sports are business. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the COS of the United States, there's a very specific demographic that dominates it. The sooner, again, we kind of change that, the better. Because right now we have a situation where we're taking underprivileged kids who go to college for 3 years and maybe, hopefully, attend classes. Then we're handing them $22 million and saying, best of luck. Good luck out there, without giving them any real guidance, without giving them any, a figure. If you watch the draft, those dudes that are shaking hands, as you kind of said, to use that idea, don't look like those players. There's not a relatability there, and that's a big problem. And to touch on this, we have Clinton Portis. A recent story came out in Sports Illustrated, who at one time, leading rusher in Redskins history, very prominent player, loved by the media, loved by fans, made some bad investments because he didn't have a lot of guidance, went broke, and in 2013 he was in the parking lot. Remember the Ponzi scheme from that movie with Steve Carell? I forget what it was called. It wasn't good. The Big Short. He was caught up in a situation like that, and he was considering getting revenge on the guy that took all his money by murdering him. It's a perfect example, and luckily someone talked him down. I think it was a TV executive that he had contact with, but she talked him down and everything else. But imagine if, when Clinton Portis came to the league, he had a general manager who knew where he was coming from and understood the situation and was able to give him better guidance. We wouldn't have that situation. There's plenty of examples like this. Titus Young, wide receiver from the Detroit Lions. Didn't have a good role modeling, blew all of his money, turned to crime, needed to get mental help, didn't have any system in check to help him do that, and the NFL pretty much washed their hands of him, and now he's in prison. You have stories like that more often than not, where these players aren't getting mentored by people that understand where they're coming from, and instead are just getting hand checks by Daddy Warbucks. Like, it doesn't work as well as it should, and the Rooney Rule's in place to hopefully fix that, but it's a process. And you do have good examples. You have Marvin Lewis, who's fantastic. You have Lovie Smith, great leader, but they're more of an exception to the rule as opposed to the rule, and that's a problem.
Well, I think it's one of those things that we'll keep talking about. I mean, for all kidding aside, at least we talk about it. I don't know if it's talked as much as it should be at the upper levels of sports media. But I don't think it is, and unless it's something reactionary like the Times article, or sometimes that seems more reactionary just looking at it. But I'm talking Sports Center. It doesn't. You're right. It seems to be when there's an attention grabbing moment, that's when they'll talk about it, but then they'll quickly leave it alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a business world, right? Talking about inequality and talking about the way it affects players and how we're kind of sacrificing the youth of these men doesn't fit the let's sell jerseys model. And unless people like Jason Whitlock can get a quick buck off making a big nose about it, or Stephen A. Smith, who likes to be noisy but not actually put any backing behind his words, not a friend of the show, Stephen A. Smith. I mean, that's all lip service. The more you talk about it genuinely and you don't just do it for headlines, I think the more recognition it'll bring. And hopefully, I mean, Grantland was a good example of journalists that kind of tackled things. Unfortunately, it's kind of gone away. I don't think it's going to go away, but we need to get more focus on that kind of journalism as opposed to the wild journalism.
Well, we'll still bring it up on this show for hopefully people watch it. We have good conversations, I think. We handled that one well. I
think so. I think, I mean, we're not going to win an Emmy.
No.
Or whatever the equivalent is for public access television. The PAMA? The BACA?
Which is a thumbs up. A thumbs up from people.
The Stevie? Yeah, we'll go for that.
We'll figure it out.
All right, on to more fun things.
Yeah, on to more fun things. Again, not this is one of those... Sorry, it's a weird transition, Franco, but it has to be done. There was recent reports... And you know, I've talked about this. You know, we like to make fun of ourselves sometimes because we are considered millennials based on the year that we were born, but I don't identify with that at all. I don't think you identify with that at all.
No.
And finally, our prayers and hopes were answered this week when it was revealed that a social scientist designated the term, and I'm not even sure how to pronounce it, xennial, xennial.
Yep, xennial.
It is a microgeneration, which they've done this occasionally because for the millennial goes from like almost 1978 all the way to 2003 or something like that, 2004. Yeah. It's a wide swath of years. So they came up with xennial because that's the group of people born from 1977 to 1983 who possess, according to this analysis, the cynicism of Generation X, which a lot of cynicism.
Yeah.
But we also hold the millennial optimism that many of folks that are currently in college have. We had an analog childhood, meaning that, and you can probably attest to this as well, we didn't have iPhones, we didn't grow up with that, the only technology we really kind of grew up with that I feel like I've been part of since the beginning were video game systems, because we were part of that generation.
Oregon Trail.
In terms of, Oregon Trail, Mario Brothers, to Super Nintendo Mario Brothers, that's the only thing that I identify growing with in terms of technology. And then everything else came when we were, for the most part, in college. I mean, we had flip phones in high school, and then smartphones.
I didn't get a flip. I had a Nokia brick my freshman year of college. Nice. And they got it for me, but that's my first cell phone when I got in college. Yeah.
Facebook didn't exist. Smartphones came out.
Yep.
What's that?
Facebook did not exist until our junior year of college. And
and then we needed a .edu.
You needed .edu, and you had to petition for your campus to be included on Facebook, for your campus to get a network. Yeah. It
was ridiculous. So then we then got smartphones, and then we kind of got lumped in with people and that grew up with the smartphone as just being ubiquitous as part of what daily life was. And I think for me, I felt pretty good about this when I was like, all right, because there was a lot of articles too, like, are you an old millennial? And it was kind of like a cheap, kind of like you're in your early 30s, but you're considered an old millennial because you're not hip enough to be and you're a 24 or 25-year-old. And I just think for me it made more sense, but I wanted to get your perspective because you're 1984 born in, and technically you are the beginning of true millennial. So I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, I think for me, the definition really connects to technology, and that I'm not gonna, we're gonna insult somebody by saying this, but that belief that no matter what happens, everything's gonna kind of work out. Like, that's kind of one. Whereas I think, as you said, Gen X is kind of like, this is wrong with the world, let's change it. And now millennials have kind of gone that boat too. But I feel like we do fit really well in the xennial in that, again, we grew up without all this technology, and then we're young enough that we're able to adapt to it, which kind of separates us from like the early Gen Xers. But at the same time, we didn't grow up with it, so we're not as in tune with it, which kind of separates us from millennials. We kind of just live in the middle ground. It's interesting. And I mean, labels are labels, and I do think there's shifts in generation. We both work with college students, so we both see this upfront and personal a lot. There's definitely a big difference from when we were in college to the kids we now work with who kind of fit into the millennial generation.
Well, I think even when you look at it from the perspective of right before our college experience, we saw 9/11 live on TV. And the students that are 18, 19 years old that are entering college for the first time, that was just part of history that they learned. That wasn't something that they experienced, which is really weird to me because they've been living under the guise of war on terror for pretty much their entire life. So it's kind of been just perpetual ongoing thing that is now part of their lifestyle. So I think that also played a big part into how our adulthood was defined, because that was a big part of, for me, I don't know what it was for you, but like when you enter college and you're under like, okay, are we going to war? Are we getting drafted? No one really knew what was going on. It was a very weird time, and no one could define it, because then that's when technology picked up and sort of zeroing in on just managing your own brand and then kind of forgetting about what was going on. That ramped up significantly, all the things that would kind of be distracting. And then the discussion of why is this college generation not as active in terms of social justice as perhaps in the 60s and 70s they were, in terms of against the war specifically. So there was a lot of things going on during our time that kind of like you felt, there's some days that and I feel like we talked about, you kind of felt guilty for trying to have some fun in college because it was under the cloud of we're going to die soon and we're going to go to war. So I think the current group of students that are entering college never had that. They've always kind of had it as this thing that happens there, but I'm focused on, and this makes me sound really, but it's like I'm focused on what's on Twitter, what I'm doing tonight, that's it. It seems more...
I'm on me. That's what it is. I'm focused on me. And I need to make sure that I'm successful by doing these things. Like, and in some ways we push them that way, right?
Yeah.
Like, in order to be successful, you need to have your resume built. You have to do an internship here. You have to get this grade. You have to get to this school. It's become much more of a focus now. And I think we've kind of driven this generation towards being, well, yes, that's great to hear about, and I'll wear the t-shirt for a few weeks. But at the same time, I need to make sure that I'm getting where I need to go so I have a future. And it's not a wrong thought, but at the same time, it's not the same as it used to be.
So do you feel more millennial? Do you feel more xennial?
I think I'm definitely on the xennial side. Just because, I mean, my difference is I'm 5 months out of the xennial window, so we'll call it a round down situation. And just, I think the interesting thing is we work with all these kids, like I see very little of myself in a lot of our athletes that come through. And not in a bad way, it's just not the same. We look at things differently. The term microaggression didn't exist when I was in college. It's very prominent now.
Oh yeah,
we can't say certain things, which is in some ways a good thing, but then sometimes it kind of goes over the line. Just depends on the side you're on. The world's just different, and I mean, having smartphones that like record video have changed things like that. Let's go have fun in college, but realize that someone's gonna have a phone on you at some point. That's all changed for them. So it's just an interesting. Like when we were out in college, I'm sure my dad will watch this. There are things that should not have been filmed, but we didn't have to worry about that, because they weren't filmed, because there were no phones able to capture video. And so that never played into our awareness and what we did and how we acted. Whereas now, no matter what you do, no matter where you are, if a camera is filming you, like it's going to be caught. So I'm sure that also affects the way they kind of exist in the world too.
Yeah, we were lucky that camera phones weren't around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let's leave it at that. I have a career now. Yeah,
Me too.
And it was just a very different awareness. And it was okay for college kids to be college kids. And it still is in some ways. At the same time, there are concerns. But in a lot of ways, we've changed for the better. I mean, if you think about it, we're more aware of situations like date rape and the situation of sexual assault on college campuses. These were things that were glossed over when we were in college that shouldn't have been. And we're finally now catching up and making them an issue. And that's a really good step. And in that way, having a phone that records is definitely a good thing. We always kind of look at the negative of these situations, but awareness has brought a lot of changes that make that situation safer. And the more we bring awareness to them, even if it's at the sacrifice of you can't pee in an alley somewhere, fine. That's a fair trade-off for making college safer for women and men and things like that.
I agree. So I will gladly throw up the xennial flag. Sure, let's do it. All in. Okay.
That's like Des Bryant. X, yeah. So here's a funny story. So we're decorating the apartment. As you can see, nothing on the walls quite yet. And I have these posters that I've had since I was in grad school. And it's kind of been an interesting point, like, can you put posters up at this age? And so we finally arrived at this like weird middle ground where we bought professional framing for my posters that I had when I was in grad school.
It is kind of like that defining moment when you're an adult and you have things that you want to put up on the wall. You have to frame it. You can't just tack it with the sticky tag you get at the CVS and call it a day.
And you're married now too, right? Like I am. Yeah. So your design choices aren't your own. Like I have these two giant, they're towels. I want to call them banners, but they're towels that I like custom made way back in the day. And one's like with all the giant signatures from the World Series team. The other one's like a 49ers towel has my name on it. And like even I sat there and I was like, I really can't put these up anymore. Yeah. But like 2 years ago, they're definitely still in my bedroom, and I've now realized that my decisions aren't just my own, and I have to check in and be like, is this gonna fit? Is this gonna match? Which is a question I don't even ask even when I get dressed now, but now apparently that's a thing I have to ask all the time. Which is for the better.
Which is for the better. I agree. I'm in that same boat. It's for the better. It is all for the better at this moment. And look at us being adults.
I know, and it's happening on recorded television, so we can refer back
live
to this.
And recorded.
Yeah, when I eventually hang a towel somewhere and I have to look back and say, wait, this is not a good idea, and we talked about it.
The last topic that we have, we kind of talked about it on last episode on the DC side of the house, but you and I are both also Marvel fans, and Marvel made a big hullabaloo about the Inhumans. And Inhumans it's an interesting, and to give some background to it, the Inhumans are a group of superpowered individuals that at one point lived up in the moon, if I'm getting my history right. They had Terrigen Mist, which basically they give people powers. It was part of their rituals as a society. In modern Marvel time, they've incorporated the Terrigen Mist into creating more mutants after they did a No More Mutant storyline, and then they did a war with the Inhumans versus the X-Men. They have started to dabble in it with the TV universe on Marvel. So Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. talk about Inhumans, Terrigen Mist, and now they're going all in on it. And they're doing a huge promotional push, putting this first pilot episode in IMAX, filming it in IMAX, putting it on IMAX screens so you can go to the movies and watch it, because it was originally supposed to be a film. It got dropped as a film and is now going to be a miniseries or a full series on ABC. I'm not quite sure. I think it's going to be a short run. It's in between the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. hiatus, so I think it's like maybe a 7-8 episode run. What were your thoughts?
Well, first, I think we have to look at the genesis of this. The reality is that Fox owns X-Men. And so as Marvel's become more prominent, they've wanted to incorporate the mutant aesthetic to the film series. And so this is the way they do it. So they basically, in the comic books, have taken the focus away from the X-Men and put it more on the Inhumans. And to match that, that's why we're pushing it out. Am I going to go see an IMAX? No. I don't have interest. There's a reason why I got dropped as a film. It's because it wasn't ready yet. And I'll wait till it comes out on ABC. And while Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been okay, it's never been something where like I had to watch it. So, I mean, I'll watch it a little bit, but it's nothing exciting for me personally.
The only Inhuman story I really liked was when they did the Marvel Knights version. That was really cool. That comic run about almost, I think, 10 years ago now, maybe longer.
Yeah, it was a long time.
I mean, they've always been interesting, but they've never held my attention for that long. I think because it's just I was more enthralled with the X-Men, with the Avengers. They always were never prominently featured by Marvel. They were kind of. You knew that it was a big storyline when they showed up because they're like, oh, the Inhumans and the Avengers are hanging out together. That means there's a pretty big threat. Black Bolt is also kind of a MacGuffin character, if you will, in some ways, because he opens up his mouth and then he can destroy everything. But it's always like, when's he going to say a word? And like that's the conceit in all the stories. Like when he says a word, everything goes crazy. So it's hard for me to like buy into that. And already I was watching the trailer getting a little annoyed. Like, oh, they're doing basically the live action version of when's Black Bolt going to speak? And when is he going to get so mad that he actually has to use his voice that he's afraid to use? I'm not that interested in it.
I mean, it's kind of like Image Comics in the 90s. The Inhumans are ripoffs of better characters and other material. And they kind of thrown together. They're trying to get away from that, and hopefully they do, but until they establish some sort of something. And Black Bolt, for me, is the least interesting character.
Yeah.
You give this guy basically the God switch.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's like Superman. How is he fallible? Like, Superman can jump over buildings, is bulletproof. The only weakness is kryptonite. Black Bolt's, for the most part, invulnerable, and he has this power that can end the world. Wonderful.
The end.
I don't know where you go with that. Like, what's the next stage? Great, he'll talk once.
What's the next stage?
He's not Silent
Season
Bob. This isn't a Kevin Smith movie. But yeah.
Before we go, I want to talk Defenders Netflix. It's coming out in August. Do you think the Iron Fist hurt it, or helped it, or didn't do anything to it?
It didn't do anything to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched the entire series. It got a little better near the end. In episode 11 or 10, you actually see the Asian character or actor who wanted to be the Iron Fist, and he plays one of the villains. And you just see how much better the series would have been had they casted him as Iron Fist. And nothing against Finn Jones. He's did what he did with the script. It's kind of a rock in the hard place because you're basically Green Arrow, and they've already done Arrow. But you're less charming because you're not written really well. Basically, he's an angsty kid who got superpowers. Just like, I don't know what to do with them. I want to be rich again. It's hard to care. But the supporting cast is good enough, and the storyline is good enough. And Luke Cage was fantastic, and that helps a lot. And Daredevil's been really great. Jessica Jones has been really great. So I think we can forget how bad the Iron Fist is in this one instance. Although I love that they killed off Finn Jones and then had another person get the Iron Fist power. But Danny Rand is Danny Rand, so we'll see what happens.
I'm excited for Defenders. I'm still going to watch it. I think it's cool. And I'm looking more forward to the Punisher series that they're doing that I think is supposed to come out. We'll actually probably see a trailer at the end of Defenders. That's my bet. I think. Yeah. Because that's going to be the next thing that is going to be on Netflix in the fall. I think it's debuting in October or November. So we'll have that to look forward to. So Franco, to wrap up, what did you learn today?
That's a really good question. I learned that we can handle serious topics for the most part. What'd you learn?
And I learned that I'm a xennial through and through, and we'll have to develop that xennial flag that we can both fly outside of our apartment windows.
Sounds good. All right, it's time to say goodbye.
I'm Brendan.
Say goodbye. I'm Franco. Peace out.
Bye. Xennials. Bye.